Now join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. All right, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Just said, I must be getting older, must be getting soft, I don't know. Anyone want to guess why? Yeah.
What?
I used to be so mean in the early days, you know? And now look at me, I'm just getting all nice. You're all bundled up, ready for snow, and you show up and it's 78 degrees and the heat's on. No, you know, it was funny, my master, they had a few kind of themes they would always talk about to give people comfort, give people convenience, right? That if you allow people to be comfortable, then they're more willing to listen and share the practice. And just recently I saw a little video, Instagram thing, and it was, I'm not even sure where it was, but it was an outdoor, like, Zendo meditation area. And there were all these wood, kind of like metaphors, there were all these wood platform planks, and everybody was sitting there, and there's Zazen with their little shawls over them. And it was just covered in snow, and it was snowing outside, and everybody was looking all peaceful. And so to my friend who was complaining about how cold it was in here the other day, I sent him that picture and said, stop complaining, and then decided to put the heat on, you know. Yeah, it's, you want people to be comfortable. And I think that that's, for me, what this practice in life is really about, in determining what ways can we learn to be comfortable. And I think that that's something for me in this practice that I've had to explore. And the beauty of this practice is it's kind of different for everybody, meaning each of you can explore in your lives, where are you comfortable? Where are you uncomfortable? Where are things kind of simple and easy, and where are things really difficult and challenging? And to be able to look at them, wouldn't it be nice if everything that was uncomfortable in your life, you could just hit a little switch on the wall, and all of a sudden it would be comfortable? But with practice, that's the idea, is that with this practice, it is kind of like hitting a little button that says, this is going to make me comfortable. Unfortunately, sometimes to get comfortable, that often means we have to go through what? Suffering, a lot of discomfort to get to the place where we're actually comfortable, right? I mean, we're already in that suffering, we're in the discomfort. And so the practice is begin to explore, why am I uncomfortable? Where am I uncomfortable? How am I uncomfortable? Where's the discomfort in my life, physically, mentally, emotionally? And then what tools, what practices, what meditation can we apply, can we integrate into our day-to-day life that will help us be a little more comfortable? So it's not always easy. It's almost never as simple as just hitting a switch and putting heat on. But the best thing about this is, in like 20 minutes, then everybody's going to complain again. It's too hot. So you never win, you know? That's just kind of the way life goes. But we'll start with the meditation practice. To those who are joining virtually, welcome. Thanks for being here. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere. Feel free to say hello and put anything there you'd like. Well, not anything you'd like, but say hello. And when we have questions, you can respond there as well. But with the meditation practice, for those who might be brand new or sitting for the first time, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. We're going to breathe. We're going to hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Right? Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps sliding to the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also relaxing the shoulders, hands are on the knees or lap. Most important, you're not trying to stop your mind. It will not go blank. You will not think nothing. Your mind will race. I'll say things periodically to remind you that you're lost in thought and bring you back to the present moment. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought. Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from your practice. Just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppatta, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from, what you believe in, where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. That's what we get every day. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. With a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Imagine going a day without being disturbed by someone. Imagine going an hour without being disturbed by someone. The night is young, and most of you won't even make it home before we're disturbed. Right? This practice is not easy. Meditation, Buddhist practice is not always fun. It is definitely not an escape. If our life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, this isn't going to fix that. It helps us become aware of our life that is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, so then we can actually make changes in our lives. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. And that's the challenge, is learning to be kind to people. Because very often people have been very unkind to us. Very often we have been unkind to ourselves. And so this practice is about waking up to, what are our thoughts? What are our words? And what are our actions? And that never changes. That is the simplest practice, and also the most difficult, because it requires us to actually be very honest and genuine and authentic with our own thoughts, our own words, and our own actions. And if we're being selfish, if we're being angry, if we're being ignorant, then recognize that. Not from a judgment standpoint of, oh, I'm such a terrible person, I got angry today, but recognize it. If we're coming from a place of kindness and compassion and love, then recognize that. Also not from a place of like, whoa, praise, look at me, I'm so loving and kind. But just the recognition of what and where am I at with all of my thoughts and words and actions. And the beauty of this practice is we have every day of our lives to do that. And that's why the practice in many ways never changes. It's just constant awareness. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. So much time focused on everybody else. And this practice is you. So with that, I'll pause. For me, always, I really just prefer to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And again, to those who are joining virtually, welcome. Feel free, if you have any questions or thoughts, to put them on the chat box there. And we'll open up to questions and use the rest of our brief time this evening for that. So, thoughts or questions?
I'm hesitant to ask this because I feel like your answer doesn't matter to me. But
someone who sat here for a long time, finally somebody who recognizes my answer doesn't matter. That's what happens when you sit in the front row, you get this stuff quicker.
I came across an article that was titled Narcissism and Buddhism.
Okay.
And I identify as being having experienced narcissistic abuse. And it took me a long time to be able to label that. And it wasn't until I was able to label that I was able to digest it in a way that I can move through and beyond. And this article was a lot about name calling. It dumbed it down to name calling. And I'm wondering what your thoughts and feelings are on the importance of naming things versus like how much of that is stories we're telling ourselves, you know, like there's a balance between the two.
Yeah, I think that, and no matter repeat, but I think you're loud enough and close enough to everybody heard that virtually. But I think that it's actually the last part of what I would have said anyway is the last piece of what you just said is that there's a balance. And, for those who might be brand new to Buddhism, just to touch on this briefly, is very often people who might be new to Buddhist practice think that whatever happens just happens and it's okay and we can just kind of move on and ignore everything. And that's, as you know, definitely not the practice. It's not about being a doormat and allowing people to abuse you and say, well, I'm Buddhist, so you can just treat me like crap. No. There's no wisdom, no compassion in that whatsoever. So I know that's not the nature of your question. I just wanted to start with that part. So then there's the balance of the storytelling about certain people or certain behaviors, right? Versus, this is your question, from what I'm hearing, versus the naming it and then kind of moving on. And I think naming it is a beautiful part of a simple meditation practice, which is very often a lot of meditation folks who lead will talk about naming or labeling an emotion as it arises. So here I'm sitting and all of a sudden I have the thought of sadness. Label it. This is sadness. It's not going to stay there forever. I also don't need to dwell on it for the next 6 months, right? Keep breathing. Oh, this is a thought of joy. Recognize, label it, name it. This is joy. This also isn't permanent. It's not going to stay. So I don't need to be devastated when joy goes away at some point over the next 6 months or 6 minutes, right? Labeling and naming things, emotions, thoughts, experiences, I think there's, in Buddhist practice, tremendous value to that. But the challenge is, can you label something or name something, as you said, and not dwell on it, and not, very often we could name something as whatever, and then we just don't move on from it. So naming it is beneficial and helpful if you can say, that's what this is, now I'm going to move on. Or you can continue to name it for 12 years and just say, well, I'm just going to name it. And then every day we're naming it, and every hour we're naming it, and everything we tell people is how I just named it. Right? So how is that any different than just the endless lack of moving on from it? That didn't come out right, but I think you know what I mean by that. Does that make sense? Does that help at all? Does that address your question?
Yeah.
I see response all over your face, so please.
Yeah, no, I think embedded in that is so many other parts to be named within that. So, which is part of why I hesitate to even ask, because I feel like I'm in a good enough place where I've seen it's helped me release so much that it allows me to love outwardly in a better, more beneficial way. So I'm I don't need to question it because I know through that it's working. Yeah. But I do think there's many aspects of that I've had to come to terms with and label and name and dissect to some degree. Somebody else might say that's a lot of dissection, but I'm I'm at such a good place now. I'm so glad I've dissected.
Yeah, and that's where I think that, whether it's Buddhist teachings or any spiritual journey or path, that each of us are going to take tools and skills that resonate and work with us. Mm-hmm. And if at the end of the day, however you're doing it is helping you be in a good place and at peace with what you've experienced, then that's what's important. Not, and you've heard me say this before, not that it fits some Buddhist definition or teaching, because ultimately Buddhist teachings don't matter. It's not Buddhism that matters. What matters is your ability to be kind and gentle and loving towards yourself and others. Yeah. And if that's through the love of Jesus, if that's through, watching Garfield cartoons, right? Whatever it is that helps you be in that place, then to me, that's what Buddhism represents anyway. So, yeah, thanks. What else?
What does Buddhism say about intention setting? Some of you know about intention setting and how oftentimes it's like a conscious process, but that it's hard to put a conscious process into place consistently, maybe sometimes. I don't know. What is it?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yes, the question is around what does Buddhism say about intention setting, and here we are wrapping up another what we call calendar year and New Year's intentions, and whether that's the nature of your question around that triggered it or not. This is that time of the year that this is going on, and I think first with Buddhist practice, all these things around loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, everything we explore. Your intention is a little bit different, I think, from what you're asking. But again, just to give it some background, your intention is the only thing, for the most part, that matters, because that's what's going to create your thoughts, your words, and your actions. So intention is important. Now, intention setting, as far as maybe habitual patterns, behaviors, goals, could be wrong here by saying this, but most people don't set out each day and set a bunch of negative intentions that they know are going to be harmful. Like, you're not going to go into the new year with a whole list of intentions that are harmful, probably, right? You're not going to set those. I didn't say you're not going to do that. You're not going to set those. So my suggestion is really a part of practice is every day when you wake up, set an intention in each moment. Did you brush your teeth today? Yeah. Yesterday? Probably tomorrow? Right? Do you set the intention of brushing your teeth, or do you just brush your teeth?
Just brush your teeth.
Brush your teeth. Amazing how that happens, right? You didn't write it down. It didn't become a New Year's resolution. You're not like, calling all your friends and being like, yo, I brushed my teeth today. Right? But why did you brush your teeth today?
Take care of my hygiene.
Take care of your hygiene, and you've created a what with it? Habit. So habits only come from intentions that are, I shouldn't say only, but habits often come from intentions that are just repeated over and over and over again, to where it's no longer an intention anymore. It's just something you do. So it helps to begin to look at, if you ended up here on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock or any sort of meditation, Buddhist spiritual place, there's probably some intention around wanting to be a healthier, happier, kinder, gentler person. Is that pretty fair to say? Like, most people don't come here to be more mean, right? So we have an intention to be kinder, gentler, happier, healthier, whatever that might be. Be aware of those and set those intentions daily and multiple times throughout the day, whatever it might be. One of the greatest teachings I ever got was day one at the monastery. The nun said to me, never forget your original intention for why you showed up here. Meaning, no matter how many challenges or difficulties or whatever I went through, I had to always come back to, I was an angry, miserable, depressed person. And that was no way to live. And my intention for diving into Buddhist practice was to be happier and kinder to myself and others. And no matter what challenges one would face, if I always come back to that intention, it would serve as a motivation to eventually, you don't have to set those intentions anymore. You're just brushing your teeth. But look at areas where you lack maybe in happy, healthy ways, and put some pretty concrete intentions, but simple ones. Like, I don't think it helps to have these unrealistic intentions and expectations and goals, nor do we need to wait for January for that. If we're miserable at the end of December, we're very likely we were miserable in March. We didn't need to wait X amount of months to set some intention for the new year. Every moment is new. Every day is new. Whether it says December, January, it doesn't matter. You know. So I don't know if that's helpful at all.
Is intention a Buddhist concept?
I mean, everything is a Buddhist concept. Everything. So I don't ever suggest people look at things as being these concrete Buddhist things. The word Dharma, at the beginning, we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. All right, the second one, the Buddha being bodhicitta, Buddha nature, not the Buddha himself. He died 2,500 years ago. He can't help you now. But you're taking refuge, safety, comfort, protection in the Buddha nature that's within you. Meaning, if the Buddha could figure out how to end his suffering as a human, great, so can we. He's no different than we are. Just people going through our days. So we take refuge and find safety, comfort, protection in knowing that we can end our suffering. The second one is the Dharma, and that's often referred to as the teachings of the Buddha. But the other Dharma is all phenomena, everything that exists. So, yes, would be the short answer. Yeah. I just never get wrapped up in like, did the Buddha, is this what the Buddhist says? You know? If any other religious leader, if Donald Duck had better ways to present things than the Buddha, then follow that. If it's going to make you and others kinder and happier and healthier, you know?
Yeah, I've always wondered if Dharma Bum was named after the book.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was.
How did that come about?
Oh man, that's a long, crazy story. But yeah, the name came from the book Kerouac's Dharma Bums. And the simplest way to explain it is that, which is funny and sad at the same time, for people who know Kerouac, who know the book, there's really no similarity or crossover into what we do here. As far as the way his life was, you know, his just excessive everything. You know, his dying at a very early young age, too much alcohol, too much everything. But when we started it as kind of young American kids who liked Bob Dylan, liked Buddhism, liked Kerouac, Beat Generation, all that kind of stuff, and very similar views in a sense that looking at, it's the quote we read every year on New Year's, but work, produce, consume, you know, all the stuff we buy ends up on our curb the next day and we buy more crap, you know, we just keep throwing stuff away and buying more. What Kerouac was writing about in Dharma Bums and on the road was really just, especially specific to American culture, a different way of living our lives. That we were just stuck in this American dream way that was keeping people so unhappy and unhealthy. And, you know, that's why I always talk about The Matrix and Fight Club and Groundhog Day, of like breaking free from that cycle. And, you know, Kerouac was really brilliant at writing about those things. Doesn't mean he lived to them, right? But we were literally sitting around, a couple of us, and this was the end of 2006, and with this crazy idea to start some Buddhist place with really no right to even do that. We said, what should we call this place? How about Dharma Bums? And it stuck.
Well, second question, what happened with the t-shirt? The symbol on the t-shirt? What does that mean?
Which one?
The
Bodhi leaf?
I only know the one t-shirt. And so it's someone sitting and
That guy? The Emaciated Buddha?
no, it's
Get a little
It's
on that
like-
side.
Yeah, that's the logo.
Oh, that little Dharma Bum dude.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was, so that actual design that was a dear friend of ours years ago at Nokai. He was a graphics dude and he was around Dharma Bums from the beginning. And he used to do these things called Buddha badges. Super cool little pins. He would make them and then sell them for like $1, and each month money went to a different charity. And he was just a brilliant graphics as well as knowledge of Buddhism And so he created a whole series of badges that all had different teachings on them. And early on, when we were looking for a new little logo for Dharma Bums, he created that guy. It's kind of like a little Dharma Bum sitting with his rucksack. And he had different uses of that. Like for our prison outreach program, that dude was sitting there and there were bars in front of him. So yeah, it's just a logo. But I think it's important in practice to realize where are we stuck. It's kind of what I was talking about earlier. You know, and that's something each person has to kind of explore on their own. If you're unhappy, if you're stuck, why? And that's my point, is Buddhism doesn't change that. Buddhism is just something else to read, something else to study, something else to practice that can trigger you to make changes in your life. But you have to make the changes if you're unhappy. So, what else? Thoughts, questions? Yeah.
I was reading something and I didn't get far enough to really know where I was going with the article, but it talked about cliches. And I'm not familiar with that. What exactly, what is that called?
So there are, think of like, best way to look at this is, think of a ship that's sinking. And all these thoughts that go in our mind all day long, right, that lead to suffering. Discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, sadness, depression, anxiety, stress, all these thoughts and emotions that we experience each day that make us feel terrible, right? That's what's leaking out of us. So when a ship sinks, right, say there's one hole, water starts, you know, think of like old school cartoon, right? And there's like a hole in the ship, and so they like cover that one up. There's another hole over here, and they're like, cover that one up. They just got these holes that keep popping up. And water keeps getting in. So the idea is to recognize what are these thoughts, the leaking out that's causing our suffering. And when you have a thought of anger, how long does that thought stay with you? When you have a thought of sadness, how long does that stay with you? That opening, allowing the water to flow, is that anger that just keeps going. And we can't ever stop it.
Are there specific ones though, or is it just a?
Endless.
I'm so confused a little bit.
Yeah.
How many pages is that book?
Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah. And very often there's this idea that I like to look at Buddhist practice as just a mirror. And we can get so wrapped up, even looking at the questions tonight, we can get so wrapped up in like the Buddhist terms. Do you know what makes you angry? And can you explore that? Do you know what makes you sad? And can you explore that? Do you know what makes you happy and joyful? Can you explore that? That's the practice. Because if you can abide in these places of kindness and compassion and joy, then you can stop reading. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
You may have asked this before,
Yeah.
but let's say I'm experiencing something like sadness, but I have a hard time feeling my emotions. And so what's the difference between, how can I tell the difference between feeling what I'm feeling or ruminating in it? And how do I let it rise and move through it, I guess?
Yeah, so the question around, sadness and what's the difference in like feeling it, being aware of it, labeling it, kind of, and then ruminating in it and being stuck in it. Again, I think that's a real specific individual thing, but one simple way is to, how long is it going? You know, if it's lingering for, and I don't say this to mean that being sad for a long period of time is bad. I don't mean that's, you know, we have loss, we have trauma, we have tremendous pain that we've experienced in our lives. And I'm not suggesting, again, for those who might be new, that Buddhism is saying, oh, you shouldn't feel sadness or you shouldn't feel anger. You know, these are emotions that are going to arise, but they don't define who we are. They're temporary emotions that we experience. But if it becomes a temporary experience of sadness that is temporarily staying there, you know, and it's like, you know, the metaphor of, you know, in meditation, you know, let the thoughts come and go, but there's no need to serve them tea and invite them in and have them sit down, right? So same thing with these emotions, recognize them, but is it really hindering you? Is it becoming kind of the second arrow teaching where the first arrow is the sadness? Well, okay, now we're sad. And now we're angry because we're sad. And now we're depressed because we're angry and we're sad. And now we're, you know, all these emotions on top of that. And I think since you mentioned sadness, I was going to say, I think when any emotion arises, the Buddhist teachings on impermanence is really important. And I think it'll actually help you go from it being this, like, noting it and awareness of it to ruminating on it for 3 hours in that day. When you see that emotion, it will pass. As the Buddha taught, all conditioned phenomena comes together for a period of time and then ceases to exist, including our emotions. But when we have an emotion, when we're sad, do you ever just step back and you're like, oh, this is sadness. This sucks. This won't stay. Or is it like, oh, this is sad? And then you fall into the whole category of, well, I'm sad, so what is that supposed to mean about me? What am I supposed to do now that I'm sad? And then you default into, like, sad mode. You know, like it's a little button on a computer game. Like, okay, now I'm sad, so what are all the things I do when I'm sad? Can you recognize that you're not sad? There is no inherent you. It's a temporary emotion that is arising. Can we understand the cause of it? And can we appreciate that it will pass? And that's where you kind of step outside and become the observer of these emotions. Does that make sense?
It does.
It's not easy. I mean, it'd be really nice if we could just recognize the emotion and just be like, yeah, it's cool. I think the awareness of it is the awareness of the impermanence of these emotions is important. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? We'll do one more. Yeah.
I just have a quick thing to say. I feel
Yeah.
like what you just said is like, I'm sure you've heard of like Brene Brown's definition of guilt versus shame, like guilt being I made a mistake and shame being I am a mistake. And
Yeah.
I think that goes back to like the labeling, like it clicked for me, like to label something as sad is to like also breathe separation from it. So it's like labeled as this thing separate than me rather than me.
And you,
And
right.
then I can like be aware of it and make a different choice from it because I'm not in it.
Right. Yeah. And very often in when we are, you know, survivors of trauma or anything like that, these are really difficult things to do because we have that mindset of like we've been attacked in physically, mentally, emotional ways. And so it can seem, especially early on, a little rough to be like, well, that's not me. But that seems odd because you're like, well, wait, I was the one who was attacked. What do you mean it's not me? But that ability, what you just said, to see it and kind of give it its life, but separate you from it is, I think, life-changing. Yeah. And that's where, and I'll close with this thought, that's where you actually used the word in your initial question around the stories, but that's where the stories that we constantly tell ourselves can become really just harmful if your story is a negative story. You know, if all you're telling yourself in your head is stories your whole life of all the bad things, that's not healthy. It's not beneficial. And it's also not the only thing that exists in your world, right? All of us, we've had bad things happen to us. We have done bad. Again, I don't like the word good or bad. I'm just using this as an example. We've had bad things happen to us, and we've done bad things to others. Right? We've also had good things happen to us, and we've done good things to others. But either of those good or bad things don't label who we are. They're just moment-to-moment experiences. And if we stay stuck in kind of these negative stories, painful stories, harmful stories, it's really hard to get out of that. And don't be afraid to, after you've sat around for 4 hours, or whatever it is, thinking about all the bad stuff that's happened in your life, don't be afraid to kind of have gratitude and remind yourself, like, you've had some good things too. Good experiences, good people, right? So there's good stuff also. So if you're gonna get lost in the story in your head, make it a good one at least. You'll sleep better. So with that, I'll close. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to those who need it most. All right, just a couple quick announcements before you all head out. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up the temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to local folks. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers. We're just unenlightened folks doing our best to share our understanding of Buddhist teachings with those who show up. So every night we have different people leading from a different Buddhist tradition. Every Thursday at 5 o'clock, we have a food redistribution program. I still think it's one of the best things around here. So if you ever think your life sucks and you're really just lacking gratitude, feed people who sleep on the streets every night. It tends to put things into perspective. So that's every Thursday at 5 o'clock. Otherwise, a couple things, just year-end stuff. We'll have our 18th annual Dharma Bum Temple New Year's celebration. So 7 o'clock, we do a potluck. 9 o'clock, I'll do a history and vision of the Dharma Bum Temple. And actually I get into the whole history part of that stuff too. And then at about 11:30, we'll all come up here and we'll do about a 20-minute meditation going into midnight. So I always say, if you've never done a silent and sober New Year's, this is your chance to get them both done. And I promise, talk about intentions, and I promise you will survive. The whole night's not silent, just like the last, 20, 25-minute meditation. So we sit silently. It's not quite like it was when we were downtown in the gas lamp and you'd hear the gas lamp exploding and we're silent. Pretty much here in University Heights, we don't even know if it's at midnight yet. The first year we were here, I was like, is it midnight? Yeah, I can't hear anything. But so that's going on. Some people come at 7 and they're home and in bed by 9 o'clock. Some people come at 9, some at 11:30 and just sit. So you're welcome at any point throughout the evening on New Year's. Other than that, we're here. Holidays are a beautiful time, but can also be very painful, sad, lonely time. So nothing closes, we don't change. We're here for everybody if you need it. So thanks for being here. Wish you all well, and see you soon.